Hi, the next 5 minutes we'll be talking about Madame X by John Singer Sargent, which entered the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York as Madame X because Sargent asked for the museum not to list her name. Same when it was first exhibited in the Salon in Paris in 1884, also no name listed, something that she had requested. But we know it's a socialite, Virginie Amélie Gautreau, an American who had come to Paris as a young girl and who'd married this really wealthy French businessman. She had become notorious in Parisian high society for her beauty, and Sargent was very, very keen to paint her. He really chased her. And he wrote to a friend, "I have a great desire to paint her portrait and have reason to think she would allow it, and is waiting for someone to propose this homage to her beauty." Sargent really painted in this traditional realist style, very different to what had started to happen in end of 19th century Paris, where the world had become infatuated with impressionism and photography. But Sargent would remain true to the type of realism that he enjoyed painting really to the end of his life. Now, when he asked Madame Gautreau to paint her portrait, he'd also had a commission come in, and he'd hoped when both these portraits were finished to show them side by side. A commissioned portrait where the patron asks for certain things, and the portrait that he instigated, where he had the freedom to portray her how he wanted. And it's interesting, they were never shown side by side, but it's interesting for us to see them side by side and to contrast and compare. Because of course the one that he instigated, the one of Madame X, is way more experimental. She looks very seductive, larger than life, almost like a Greek goddess with this unusual twisted body. There are no props or accessories, really pared down with this restricted palette. It makes it all rather original and quite radical. You can tell he experimented with different kind of poses. It took about 30 sessions for him to get it right. And in the end, he settled for a portrait that has many links with traditional and classic European art. He painted her face on profile, for instance, making her look like an ancient Greek or Roman goddess or portrait on a coin. He also painted her body in this beautiful S curve or this serpentine S, something that the ancient Greeks did in their sculpture too. And it comes about when you put all your weight on one leg, which means that you have to twist your shoulder in the opposite direction to not fall over, which is called the contrapposto. And it creates this beautiful S shape in the body, and that's of course what he's done with her as well. He's also looked at classical art from the slightly less distant past, from the Baroque period, using the similar type of background that Velasquez often used, these plain brownish backgrounds. If you look closely, you see this half moon crescent just above her head in her hair. And that, of course, is a symbol of the goddess Diana, the goddess of the hunt, the moon, and the childbirth. And it's something that was used again in classical European art by women having their portrait done as the goddess Diana, these allegorical portraits. They were seen as a compliment to their beauty, purity, and chaste virtue by having themselves portrayed like that. So while Sargent is really trying to portray her in this really new and different way, while at the same time making these connections to earlier European art, it was completely missed by the public. When he exhibited this painting, everyone hated it, made fun of it, and found it rather vulgar, especially as her dress was slipping down one of her shoulders. It became such a row that both sitter and an artist were really mortified. He quickly repainted the strap to its present position, and he he left France. He quickly moved to the UK, trying to get away from all the negative feedback. And it's interesting that there was so much negative feedback, because not that much later she had her portrait done again in 1891, and again her dress slips, but this time no one really raised an eyebrow. He kept the portrait in his possession, realizing that it was a stunning and unusual and important painting, and held on to it until a year after her death, when he gave it or sold it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's been an inspiration, this painting, for I don't know how many actresses or Vogue sessions, and a very important painting in the canon of art history. Thank you so much for listening.